started, I just want to give my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anyone that I talk about in this video. This is all just information that I have found on the internet and I'm compiling into one video. So James Patrick Bulger, also known as Jamie Bulger, was born on March the 16th, 1990, and he was 2 years old, just a couple of weeks off of his 3rd birthday at the time of his murder. He lived in Liverpool in Merseyside in England with his mother Denise Bulger, who is now Denise Fergus. And I'm unsure whether he lived with his father, Ralph Bulger, at the time. He was a gorgeous little boy. He was very friendly, very cheeky, very social. He was just a lovely little boy. On the 12th of February 1993, Denise Bulger, her son James, and Denise's friend all went to the Strand, which was an indoor shopping centre. They walked around for a while, they did a little bit of shopping, and then Denise and James went to the butcher's at around 3:40 p.m. Denise let go of James's hand for a matter of less than a minute, just to kind of get the money out of her purse, hand it to the cashier, get the change, put it back in, and when she looked back down to take hold of his hand again, James had gone. So his mum immediately starts panicking. She's looking around the shop, she's looking outside the shop, frantically just trying to find her son. So the shopping centre put a routine call out for missing children, for like people to report any sightings or bring him to the front desk or whatever. This wasn't an uncommon thing to happen in a shopping centre. I mean, there's toy shops, there's sweet shops. Kids like often just go wandering from their parents. It's not an unusual thing to happen. This announcement fed back nothing. No one came to the desk to say that they'd seen James, no one brought him in, and the manual search that his mum and other staff were doing, that also came back nothing, and so police were contacted.
It wouldn't have entered your mind that he'd have been taken by anybody, but all they were concerned was for his safety and where he was. Because it was a busy road, and he could have easily been knocked over.
As time went by, the search extended beyond the shopping centre, because obviously the more time that goes by, the further James could have gotten, and so people started to search the streets nearby the shopping centre.
We searched near canals, because you always think he might have fallen in. We go and search derelict yards, scrap areas. It's a quite industrial area. It was such a vast area to sort of search, really.
Meanwhile, Denise, James's mother, was taken to the police station.
I had police walk in the room and holding a pair of shoes in front of my face, and I was shaking my head, no, not his. And that was a sigh of, kind of relief, them shoes wearing James's.
But still, that night, nobody had come forward to say that they'd seen anything, and at this point it was really worrying. It was really looking like an abduction at this point. The next morning, it had been almost 24 hours since anyone had last seen James, and Denise and her family had been at the police station the whole time, almost 24 hours. And that was when police finally got their first lead. The shopping centre had looked over their CCTV footage, and they found a clip of a toddler leaving the premises of the shopping centre with 2 young boys.
And we assessed the ages to be about 14, 15. Although it wasn't clear, because the films get turned over by day, it's poor visibility.
The CCTV footage was really bad, very unclear, although Denise could still identify James due to the outfit that he was wearing that day.
And I knew straight away it was James. I thought, I've got a perfect chance of getting him back here. There was words going around that they could be classing him as a brother, brother that they've wanted, and they've probably got him in a shed somewhere feeding him sweets and looking after him.
Initially, this comforted Denise and the rest of the Bulgers, knowing that he'd gone off in the company with 2 young boys. Like, the chances of getting him back were pretty high, and their intentions were probably not malicious, whereas if they'd seen him leave with, like, a middle-aged man on the CCTV footage, you can imagine the intentions, and you can imagine the chances of getting him back weren't going to be very high.
Were they playing some kind of game with him, perhaps? Was he being held hostage, or was he being kept by them somewhere as a playmate? Or had some harm been done to him?
So, as with most missing children's cases, Denise took to the news to give a public appeal to try and get whoever had James to bring him back.
Denise, what is your appeal to the public?
If you've got me baby, just bring them back.
Et voilà le copy trading XM. Copiez des traders qui ont du succès et faites des profits sur les marchés. Ou soyez copiés et remportez une part de profit jusqu'à 50% grâce à vos stratégies. C'est gagnant-gagnant pour tout le monde. Inscrivez-vous au copy trading d'XM et tradez comme un expert en un rien de temps.
But despite this, and despite the CCTV images being made public, nothing really came back.
We had these two boys and we had to find them. It was assessed that we had to look for boys within an age range of 10 to 18, but we concentrated more or less looking at boys who were about 14.
All local police were contacted to see if they had any young children on file that had been in trouble before, that might fit the description of these two boys on the CCTV footage.
You interviewed local police officers and asked them who did they suspect that would be these children. I was unfortunately in an area where a lot of children were always in trouble, and there was a lot of names put forward.
But despite all the appeals and the whole of Liverpool searching for this little boy, the next day Denise received the worst news she could possibly get.
Protected under a police tent lies the body of a young boy, found this afternoon by children playing on a railway embankment.
2 days after his disappearance, James Bulger's body was found on a railway line, and it was actually found by a group of children.
They were found by children, not by adults, and those kids must be still affected today as a result of what they saw.
So now this investigation turned to a manhunt for two young boys that are now possible murder suspects.
That moved the story to a new depth, shall we say, of shock and dismay, and by now the world's press were descending on Liverpool and the eyes of the world were on Liverpool.
Magazine editors offered their services to police to try and clear up these images of the CCTV footage. I mean, the whole of Liverpool was coming together to try to solve this.
We were still looking at age range 14 to 18, you know, evil sort of children that could have committed it.
In an attempt to try and get members of the public to come forward with any information they might have, police released the details of James's last steps.
From where James was abducted to where he was found, it must be nearly 3 miles. A long way to walk a young child. But where James was found, they had to climb up the side of a railway bridge, which was very near to Walton Lane police station.
Officers questioned over 60 young boys around the ages of 14, 15, 16, because that is how old police believed these two boys on the CCTV footage to have been. And just a side note, one of these innocent boys that they questioned out of this 60, he actually had to flee Liverpool with his whole family because he was getting threats from so many people that knew he'd been questioned and thought that he was guilty, although he was innocent, but he still had to flee because of threats. After a few days, a woman contacted police saying that she'd just seen this CCTV footage on the news and she actually recognised one of the boys. She said that this boy had actually skipped school that day with his friend. And I mean, there were two boys on this CCTV footage during school time as well. So all the other kids were in school. So what are the chances that these two boys skipped school together and there were two boys on the CCTV footage? So this was an immediate lead.
I was called to brief officers to arrest two young boys. One had been seen to have paint on his shoes.
Paint, along with other items that we'll talk about later, were actually found at the crime scene. But the boys that were being accused were just 10 years old, both of them, whereas police believed that the boys in the CCTV footage were like 14, 15, so they didn't believe it 100% at first. They were originally just going to the house to question them and then be able to eliminate them as suspects.
So when they said 10-year-old boys, you think, oh well, it's got to be done. Information's come in, so we've got to go and see him and interview him.
But you
to
weren't
eliminate
expecting
him.
that you know they could possibly be the ones?
Oh no, I didn't. I don't think the other detectives did as well.
So a team of officers went to speak to 10-year-old John Venables, who was the boy that the woman recognised from the CCTV footage. And a separate team of officers went to speak to Robert Thompson, who was also 10 years old and John Venables' friend.
Said, Robert, I'm here because of James' murder. He says, yeah, no. She said, but we've been told that you might be involved in it. Then he started sort of panicking.
Phil then told Robert that he was arresting him and taking him to the police station for further questioning.
And told him what I was there for and the fact I was arresting him. And then he started crying. But it wasn't tears there, they were crocodile tears. I was taken aback a bit.
So both Thompson and Venables were taken to separate police stations for questioning.
The first thing I noticed about John is that he looked far younger than the 10 years that he was in actual fact. He looked like an 8-year-old, little cherubic, angelic-looking face.
So before we carry on with the kind of story and the questioning, the police questioning and stuff, I want to give you a little bit of background on Thompson and Venables and kind of their upbringing and stuff. So we'll start with Robert Thompson. He was one of 7 children, so it was a huge family. And it's believed that his father, also called Robert Thompson, used to beat his mother Anne before eventually starting an affair with a woman that he met on a family holiday with the rest of the Thompsons. And his dad made no attempt to hide this affair from the family either. He even told his wife Anne that if she had a problem with it, if she complained about it, then he'd just leave. He'd just leave her and the kids. He rarely spoke to his wife and kids as it was anyway, spending most of his time either at the pub drinking or with this other woman. Eventually he did leave Anne and all 7 of his sons to go off with this other woman, and he actually left Anne £5, which is all he contributed to all 7 of his children's upbringing. Other than that, the Thompsons never saw their father again, other than one occasion at his mother's funeral when Robert was just 6 years old, and even then his dad didn't speak to any of his kids. It was then Robert's mother Anne turned to alcoholism, and all 7 kids were pretty much left to fend for themselves, and their emotional and physical needs just weren't being met. Just 7 weeks after their father left them, all of the Thompson family were out for the day, and when they returned home, they found that their house had burnt down. And so all 8 of them had to spend 2 months in a hostel. Eventually, after these 2 months, the Thompsons were rehoused into a tiny little terrace house for all 8 of them. 7 young boys and their mother in a tiny little terrace house, and this was when Anne's alcoholism just got so much worse. She started keeping a bottle of alcohol under her pillow so she could drink it last thing at night, first thing in the morning. So the Thompson kids now not getting enough attention. I mean, one parent is now gone, one parent is an alcoholic. They're just not getting enough attention that children need. And so they all started acting up. They all started getting into trouble constantly. Social workers were constantly coming to the house. Anne hated it that social workers were coming to the house, and just nothing changed. Eventually the boys started bullying each other as well. Like, the older ones would bully the younger ones and so on until it got to the youngest. And they would all skip school, sometimes because they wanted to skip school, and sometimes because the older brothers would threaten the younger ones, saying that they would beat them if they did go to school. In one term alone, Robert missed 49 out of a possible 140 days in school. So that is over a third of the time in one term that he missed. And because he was missing so much work, he was getting behind, he wasn't on the same level as the rest of his classmates, and so he was held back a year in school. Oftentimes when he would miss school, Robert would go out and shoplift, sometimes stealing things for his baby brothers and for his mum to try and help the family out, because they were a poor family. She was a single mum looking after 7 boys. Like, they didn't have a lot. And so Robert sometimes would steal toys for himself as well, because they didn't have much. Like I said, the older brothers would abuse the younger brothers, often tying them up, locking them in the pigeon shed outside, and one time one of the older brothers even pulled a knife on one of the others. On one occasion during an argument, Anne Thompson actually hit one of her children, and so he called the social services and asked for them to take him away, and so they did. They came and they took 2 of the boys away, both of which later in life attempted suicide. In 1993, one of Robert's younger brothers was found wandering alone around the Strand, that same shopping centre where James Bulger was abducted from. He was scared, he was crying, and when someone asked him what had happened, he said that his older brother Robert and his friend, not John Venables, a different friend, had taken him to the Strand shopping centre, kicked him and left him there and gone home. And that's about it for Robert Thompson's childhood up until the point of James Bulger's abduction. A pretty horrific childhood, honestly.